All right, let's dive right into this explainer. We're going to confront a pretty jarring, honestly almost counterintuitive reality today. When you finally sit down to take the Project Management Professional, or PMP exam, your actual, real-world project management experience might just be the very thing that causes you to fail. Crazy, right? Well, welcome to the Master Guide to Passing the PMP exam, where we're going to completely rewire your brain to conquer this test.
So, here's what you're actually up against. You're going to be facing exactly 180 questions on this modern exam. But listen, these aren't your typical simple vocabulary quizzes. No way. Over 80% of them are vague, multi-paragraph situational questions. They're going to throw you into complex, messy project scenarios that are specifically designed to test exactly how you react under pressure.
And the stakes? They're incredibly high, because you have exactly 230 minutes to defeat this absolute monster of an exam. That means you literally do not have time to second-guess yourself. You need a tactical cheat code to navigate these scenarios efficiently, not just a massive stack of memorized flashcards.
Here is our playbook for today's explainer. First, the PMP exam reality. Second, PM foundations and terminology. Third, entering the PMI utopia. And finally, the answer elimination framework. Let's kick things off with Section 1, the PMP exam reality, and why the real world fails you.
The core philosophy here is actually pretty simple. The Project Management Institute, PMI, they don't care if you can just flawlessly recite textbook definitions. They want to see your leadership behaviors in action. Think about it. In the real world, if a stakeholder wants a minor software change, you might just text your lead developer and say, "Hey, can we squeeze this in?" But if you choose that informal action on the PMP exam, you will fail. For sure.
Moving right along to Section 2, PM foundations and terminology. These are your core weapons. First up is a concept that governs literally every project on Earth, the triple constraint. You might know it as the iron triangle of scope, time, and cost. It's a limiting factor that affects every single project execution decision you'll ever make. If your stakeholder suddenly wants to increase the scope, well, you can't magically pull that off without affecting either the time or the cost. It's an unbreakable rule. And that leads us directly into our next crucial term, which is scope creep. Listen, this is basically considered the ultimate sin in the PMI universe. It's the uncontrolled expansion of the project. On the exam, saying yes to just one tiny extra feature without formal documentation and adjustments to time and cost, that is an absolute trap. Never, ever let the scope creep. So how do you prevent that creep? You use the Work Breakdown Structure, or WBS. Think of it like a giant puzzle. It's an organized visual display that translates those massive, high-level deliverables into small, manageable work packages. It's exactly how you decompose the total scope so your team actually knows what they're supposed to be executing.
Now, all these terms and tools, they fit perfectly into the overarching architecture of the 5 process groups: initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and controlling, and closing. Historically, this is exactly how projects were structured, from getting authorization to planning your baselines, executing the work, checking for variance, and formal closure. Every single project touches these groups in some way.
But wait, because the 7th edition of the PMBOK Guide completely shifted this landscape. It moved away from those strictly rigid process-based steps and introduced 12 core principles to guide your behavior, things like stewardship and adaptability. And it pairs those with 8 interrelated performance domains that focus heavily on delivering actual value and outcomes, rather than just, blindly following a checklist.
Okay, Section 3, entering the PMI utopia. This right here is the secret sauce.
You really have to understand the stark contrast between these two worlds. In the messy reality of everyday project management, sure, you've got quick fixes and informal chats happening all the time. But in the heavily regulated PMI utopia, you are a servant leader with off-the-charts emotional intelligence, you follow procedures flawlessly, and formal change control is absolute king. Which brings us to an absolutely crucial point, rule number 1 of this mindset. The servant leader assesses before acting. When a problem pops up, PMI wants to make sure you aren't just some impulsive manager. You must always evaluate, analyze, or review a document before you take any physical action. If you see the trigger words first or next in a question prompt, alarm bells should be ringing in your head. Then we have rule number 2, which simply dictates, never pass the buck. We call this the escalation trap. Look, PMI considers you the CEO of your project.
Escalating an issue to the project sponsor is a last resort. You only do it when a problem, like, say, losing all your funding overnight, is completely outside your authority. Otherwise, you own the problem.
Let's bring it all together in Section 4, the Answer Elimination Framework for your tactical execution. Here is our 4-step answer elimination framework. It's basically a cheat code. Step 1, identify the methodology. Agile has totally different rules than predictive. Step 2, identify your phase. Actually, you can't draft a project charter if you're already in the executing phase, right? Step 3, kill extreme absolute words like force or demand. And finally, Step 4, apply rule number 1. If you're choosing between taking an action and doing an assessment, always choose the assessment.
Let's actually test this framework right now. Imagine you're sitting there taking the exam and this pops up. A critical machine breaks down on your construction site, threatening the schedule. What should the project manager do first? Now, your real-world instinct is probably screaming at you to fix it immediately. Rent a new machine, save the timeline.
Okay, let's use our framework. We immediately cross out option A, renting a machine, because that's an impulsive action. We cross out B, asking for overtime, because again, it's an action without an assessment. We eliminate C, escalating to the sponsor, because that completely violates rule number 2. Remember, you're the CEO. That leaves us with D, review the risk register. You're assessing the planned response before you act. It is the one and only correct PMI utopia response.
So what you absolutely must take away from this explainer is that you simply cannot memorize your way out of this exam. You have to truly understand the logic of this system. So my final question to you is this. Are you ready to temporarily unlearn the real world, adopt the PMI mindset, assess before acting, and conquer those 180 questions?